Well, howdy, friends. Welcome back to another Fireside Chat. I'm Winder Lyons, and Mr. Edward Stone is with us again today.
Hi, Winder.
Eddie is the founder, driving force, and creative genius behind Touchstone Essentials, this company that we're with that has the most, I don't know, they're just, I'm at a loss for words as to how wonderful I think the product line is. Personally, I don't think I need to go anywhere else to get anything else. I'm just going to live on this. I'm going to quit eating. I'm going to be a breatharian and your products. That's it.
Well, we might off the air need to talk about that a little bit. I don't know if we quite got it all, but we can work on it.
I've got to buy a lot of products. I get hungry, but what the heck, that's good.
So a lot of people would live longer if they just stopped eating things, right? I mean, for the most part, that might not be a bad strategy.
Well, I heard somewhere that most of our hunger cravings are actually a cry for more water, that we mistake the impetus for something that it's not, which is why we have such, well, one of the reasons I think we have so much obesity in the country is that people are mistaking the impetus.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, there's sort of a couple dynamics at work there for a lot of people when they were hungry. If they did just go drink 10, 12 ounces of water, they wouldn't be so hungry, right? I mean, that would immediately be something that happened as it helps to satisfy their appetite. And the other thing is, in the same way that being thirsty or dehydrated makes you hungry, so does eating bad food. It creates this up and down cycle with blood sugars. Most people know this, the ultra processed foods, and I mean, that's the majority of what people eat. And so they would benefit by less of that, but also just more water. So, I mean, we could make a whole nother show about this. But
we'll do that one of these days. I think you have something else planned for today. Where are we headed on this call?
Well, I wanted to talk about a blog that we recently published, and I hope people have been able to enjoy these blog posts and articles that we put out there. We're constantly trying to make sure we're providing value for folks, give you things that you can share with other people so that you're part of that, value sharing equation, because we want to think about, not just the body and the food we eat. We also try to talk about some things you should avoid, right? We have articles about dyes in food and other things like that, but you need to also think about your physical activity, right? That's probably another conversation for another day, but also the mind, right? I mean, this idea of homeostasis, I think it sounds a little out there for a lot of people, and they don't think of it as having a real practical aspect. But the truth of the matter is that whole mind, body, soul, I'm not going to talk about soul, but I'll talk about sort of the mind and mental state and personal philosophy has a lot to do with the quality of the life we live and the quality of the life of those that have to live with us. Mm-hmm. Just as much, right? So you're worried about your mental state as well as the mental state of those that have to be around you. And so we put together a piece the other day really talking about a purpose-driven life. And for a lot of that, when I say that, I think sometimes people think of, Gandhi or Dr. Martin Luther King or these things where it's this larger set of purpose. But I've met some people along the way here. I've got kids now that my daughter's 25, my son is 23, so they're in that adult phase. But I've met some people that along the way with my kids sort of interacting with parents and others that, their purpose was to do their part inside their community. They were a volunteer inside of the organization that we're working with, whether that was the soccer or the band or the chorale or whatever it happens to be. And their kids showed up on time with good manners and clean uniforms or whatever it was, right? That's a purpose-driven life where you're just trying to impact your community in a way you can because it's not necessarily immediately available, the other stuff. And so it's about fulfillment. And, one of the challenges that I've found is that people can think of these notions, but they don't necessarily know how to get there, right? And so for me, and I realize there's any number of ways we could attack this. We could create a list of 10 things to do. I could give you different sets of assignments and homework, and we could go back and do it and then come back again and again and again. But I've got sort of these 5 things that I keep in the back of my mind that one way or the other play a role in trying to get myself to live that purpose-driven life. And a part of my purpose, I believe, at age 55, sort of what I've identified, what I think is a way for me to make a contribution, but at the same time, because the purpose-driven life for me is also about the fulfillment that you're able to enjoy, right? When you're feeling fulfilled, then you're getting in there and addressing sort of that purpose-driven life is. I want to help people realize the full measure of their potential. And that's my mission statement right there. It's the full measure of potential. Everybody's got different potential, right? I'm not trying to cast a shadow on what their potential should be, but whether it's optimizing your health or optimizing your physical capacity or your contribution from a work standpoint to society, whatever it happens to be. And so I've got this formula of 5. And if it's okay, I'd like to just sort of dive in there and, feel free if you want to fill in the blanks with some of this stuff too. But the first one for me is, and I bring this up because I just find that a lot of people I meet along this journey have sort of forgotten about this. And maybe it's because they've been beat up a little bit, right? It's real easy in a modern world to sort of get lost in the chaos of elections or the chaos of whatever it happens to be, right? This larger set of commotions that exist in life and sort of suck all the air out of the room in the discussion, instead of the discussion being a little bit about self-purpose or self-care, these kinds of things. It becomes these larger cultural issues that, they do have a level of importance, but at the end of the day, what's happening in your household is more about the mental health and other things going on with the people that live in it. And that is to first, you got to have a dream or someplace you want to go. And I don't necessarily mean that you need to take out a 3x5 card and, write down a dream statement or things like that. I'm not talking about necessarily material possession. Although if your dream is to own a car or an island or something, that's okay. There's no sort of value judgment on that, but it doesn't have to be attached to something material in that regard. The dream can simply be that if you wind your today, take a few minutes towards the end of the day, or maybe it's in the morning hours. I think in the middle of the day, it's hard because there's so much chaos around you, to think about, what, if I'm successful at what I'm doing, if I'm going to find success, what is that going to look like 3 years or say 5 years from now? Try to sit down and envision your day 3 years from now that you would deem having been accomplished. Boy, my day looks like this, which means I got this done, I accomplished this or accomplished that. It could mean that you're working in an orphanage in a really poor country or the Appalachian region of the United States, right? That could be what that successful day looks like. It could be you with an umbrella drink in a blue Caribbean sea, right? What does it look like for you? Could be you watching a child cross the stage and receiving their PhD and knowing in the back of your mind they don't have any student debt because you helped to provide that base education for them. So whatever it happens to be, I just know this: you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere, or we don't know where we're going. And there's too many distractions along the way to not have a course point out in front of us. And I'm not even saying if you write down a couple sentences today about what success looks like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you pick it, right? I'm not trying to say that won't change, but we need some place to start. Mm-hmm. And I've discovered in my life, and I'll tell you right up front, I don't really understand how this occurs, but if I really get serious about what I want that to look like in 3 to 5 years, no matter how audacious it happens to be, it just happens.
Engaging the universe to power your journey.
Yeah. And if I don't make it real for me, then the universe can't help me make it real. Right. And so sometimes I've found is that when I at least verbalize it to myself, say it out loud, when I write it down on paper, maybe I use a picture board. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But my chances of it happening are far greater than not. Not that every one of my audacious dreams have come true, but, if you'd have seen me nearly 30 years ago when I had this accidental introduction to this industry, never even really knew much about health and nutrition. I was easily 25 plus pounds overweight with high cholesterol and a pre-diabetic, all these wonderful signs for a guy in his late 20s. Unfortunately, I was a typical American male. That's sort of the sad aspect of that. But I knew I didn't want to be that person in the future, but I wasn't good enough. I couldn't necessarily define it beyond that, but I didn't want to be a fat guy on prescription meds.
It's almost un-American.
Yeah, right. I just knew that, right? I knew for the example I established with my kids and some other things. And I wasn't thinking about Whole Foods. I wasn't thinking about synthetic vitamins. I wasn't thinking about any of those kinds of things. I just had a notion of the kind of person I wanted to be as an adult, which wasn't a victim of circumstance or poor choices, but someone that had provided for myself a different set of circumstances because I admired people that I met that I knew easily had busier lives than me, probably had less resources than I had, that just looked healthy. That was appealing to me. And so I started out on a marathon. And here's the thing I want to tell everybody that's thinking about this, right? That you're worried about what the public thinks, or you're worried about what other people think, or you're worried about fear of failure. We'll talk about that in just a second. If you'd have saw me at the starting line of this marathon, you would not have bet I'd have finished. Right? I was clearly the tortoise of the tortoise and hare scenario. And I've made course corrections along the way, but it's only that I've deepened that basic desire. I got a little more sophisticated about it. Turns out the journey's a lot easier once you find out some of the answers to the test. And so that's a part of what my life has been like. Part of what we're doing here at Touchstone is providing people the answers to the test so they don't have to figure everything out themselves. And so not to be too long-winded about it here, the first one for me is to dream and dream big, and don't dream with any kind of restrictions on yourself. What does it look like 3 to 5 years from now if you're successful at whatever it is, if it's this business or something else? What does that look like? Number 2 for me is careful that you don't let fear dictate your life. I do believe an overwhelming number of people really begin the day from the choice of their outfit to other things in fear more than excitement and embrace. They tend to not do things that they may test the status quo because they are worried about what other people will think. Mm-hmm. This is a really critical thing. And if for you, you're not quite sure what that looks like, I just want you to be conscious of it. The first place to begin is to think about the decisions you make, and particularly the things you say no to. Are you saying no to them for reasons of somebody else's opinion, or is it just logical that you should say no to it? Right? I think it gets in the way a lot. Number 3 is about living in the moment and embracing the moment that you're in. For those that spend much time with me, you'll hear me referencing Dr. Viktor Frankl quite a bit in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. For those that are listening that have never had a chance to read that book, any public library will have that. There's probably copies of it, frankly, that are online at this point. It's an interesting story. Dr. Frankl was captured during World War II and sent to an internment camp, and most of the people there didn't make it out. And he had this manuscript he kind of held on to that he wanted to publish. That was his great legacy he was going to leave, and he was kind of worried about surviving the camp because of that. And it turns out there was a self-discovery that was a part of his manuscript, that by having a really strong desire to make it out, just to publish this work that he thought would contribute to other people's lives, he felt like that played a role in his survival. One of the things he learned was the people that lost focus on the future, that didn't see themselves ever getting out, tended not to get out. Mm-hmm. They became victimized, right? And some of that is random. We certainly recognize that, but it's an interesting read. And one of the aspects of that is to, just recognize that where you are, you need to be there. And that can mean things like, for example, when I'm with you, that I'm paying attention to you and I'm not looking at my phone. That I'm giving you the gift of listening to you and paying attention to you. Whether that's with a spouse, someone you're in a relationship with, a child, a colleague, if you pause to recognize someone, then go all in and take that next 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is and be there, because so few people are really listened to in life, really deeply heard, that you become the best thing that's ever happened to them for a long period of time. The enrichment that you will feel by this gratitude that others have towards you makes that moment far more meaningful than a price can be put on. And so somewhere along the way, I made it a point to say that to myself, I can't let myself get so busy. And it's easy to do in a modern world, right? It's easy to get self-absorbed in the importance of your own moment, that I don't live in the moment and recognize it for what it is. You know, I talked about establishing long dreams down the road. Don't throw away today living for that, right? You can still keep your eye on 3 to 5 years, but live in this moment. I have a little exercise I do, and I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but if you say that the average person lives to say, let's say 85 years of age. And for most listening to this, you'll live past 90, 95 years of age. There'll be a lot of people live well over 100 years of age that are listening to us. And if you do it right, you won't be drooling on yourself when you get there. There's going to be a little bit more going on so that, you know, you can enjoy that life, right? That's a part about not becoming a prisoner of your body by the decisions that you make. But if you say 85 is the number and you calculate the number of weeks and years all combined, that means there's about 4,400 Mondays in the life that you have. 4,400 Tuesdays. You know, for me, when I broke that down, it didn't sound like a big number. And I didn't want to waste a single Tuesday. I didn't want to think, oh, dang, now I got 4,399 of those son of a guns, right? Because when a day is gone, whether you're Bill Gates, the president of the country, or Bono, or whomever it has to be, the day is gone, right? You can't relive it. You can learn from it. You could have a set of memories you created with it. It could be a component of your legacy, depending upon what happens, but it's gone. And so while I am thinking about what I want in the future, and I'm trying to develop habits and progress and a course of action that gets me there, I don't want to forget to live where I'm at today. And I meet a lot of people that do that. I find it unfortunate when we've got this arc we're trying to get to of a good life, a healthy life. And I know that there's a lot of sort of negative going on in the world. I think there's always been a lot of negative going on. I think we're more aware of it now than ever before. But I think the arc of our existence, and while we do have some challenges in front of us, I'm betting on the human race. I mean, I'm betting on us figuring it out and getting there, not without some sacrifice and some pain along the way. I just really believe the arc of where we're going is a good one, right? So if you're living in this moment and giving the gift of presence to other human beings, then I think your course, your chances of getting to your goals are just that much greater. And if you find number 4, so just to recap, you know, I believe in dreaming big, careful of fear, be conscious of fear, don't let it dictate, living in the moment, really, really crucial as far as I'm concerned. Number 4, if you some go and get it.
Lost you
Don't
there.
be afraid to reach out to a mentor. Am I still there?
Yeah, but that last sentence didn't make it. Why don't you try that one again?
Okay. All right. Number 4 is, if you need help, go and get it. Don't be afraid to get the help you need. And that can be because you actually need somebody to help and mentor and tutor you. Or it could mean that you need to give yourself some clues or cues, right? I keep lists. Anybody spends much time with me, I've got a series of lists I'm trying to constantly work through. I try not to get overwhelmed by them, but I do. And I also use visual pieces. And so right now, you know, my 3 and 5 years, sort of what does Eddie's life look like 3 and 5 years, are more visual cues for me, or vision boards is one way to look at it, than anything else. I've got some pictures. I keep them near me. I keep them visible of where I want to be in 3 and 5 years. And for anybody that's never done that, I just want to encourage you to give it a try because it's powerful. If you can take your words and format or create a few sentences, it's good. If you attach those to a visual piece, you want to build a building somewhere for some organization or some reason, go build yourself a Lego building and put a title on that thing with a magic marker and put it on your desk.
Yeah.
Your mind activities will get you there. And so number 4 for me is to either keep a journal, write it down so that you can kind of categorize what's going on in the day and learn from it, or utilize a visual board. And then I realized when I have monopolied a lot of our times, the 5th thing that I'll mention. And so just to reiterate, dream big, don't let fears dictate, live in the moment, utilize a journal, a vision board, something like that, some kind of tool, right? It's a tool. And the final thing for me is to work on letting go of negative emotions. Now, I'm not Dr. Phil or Dr. Ruth or Dr. Oz or any of these people, right? I'm just a guy that's been on this journey. And what I benefit from is I've been on the journey with people like you, Wander. I mean, I've been on this journey and developed some relationships, and I have had the good fortune of seeing things that work and things that don't work. And I've seen some brilliant, talented people, smarter than me, more capable of me, taller, better looking, faster, all these attributes, right? Not make it because they were caught up in negative emotions that at the end of the day don't really matter, only in their mind. You read about people that get caught up in road rage and actually pull out a gun and shoot somebody over traffic. Okay, let's all admit that traffic's no fun whatsoever, but it isn't worth taking somebody's life over, or it isn't worth giving up a day of your life for. So of the 4,400 days you get, if you've allowed your morning commute to upset you for the day, that morning commute cost you a day in your life. Golly, towards the end of your life, you'd think that was worthwhile? And we don't even know what's going on with those people. I mean, some of them are just rude and not great people. But I don't see myself as being here to try to rectify that imbalance of scales for humanity, right? Some people are just that way. I try to stay clear of them as much as I can, but I won't let them steal my day. I'm not going to do it, right? I'm not, somebody doesn't know their manners. I'm not going to do it. I'll use my abilities to lessen their impact on my life or remove their impact of my life or other things like that. But I'm not going to try to teach them a lesson. I'm just going to try to minimize their impact on me unless it's a professional situation where I have to take a stronger series of actions. But rarely is that the case. For most people, the negative emotions that wind up ruining their day are things that are inconsequential in the bigger picture of their quality of their retirement, their health, nutrition, exercise, love of their family, whatever it happens to be. And so that's my formula. We could break them down different ways and probably use different words, but I'm a big believer that you need a formula. Let me just say that. So if you don't have a formula, take a few minutes today and think about what your formula is. Do you have any sort of set of rules that you've established for yourself that kind of help you get better or get to where you want to go? And if you don't have any answers to that, maybe start by saying, where do I want to go? If I do everything right, if it all goes right for me in the next 3 years, what will a Monday look like 3 years from now that I'm living? Will anything have changed? And if you can't envision it changing, challenge yourself and think about the things you want to see changed. And what would that look like?
That's very powerful stuff. And you have embodied that with your lifestyle. You have lived it, you've accomplished it, you're doing it. So you're actually walking the talk. And that's a pretty strong impetus for someone to try to model that. I think you're talking, you're about negativity. The part of that conversation is so important. People worry all the time. And I kind of think of worry as negative prayer. That if you put your focus on what you don't want, you're going to attract that. And, you know, there was Gandhi said a really interesting thing one time. He said, you know, getting back to your point about being present in the moment, he said, do the best you can with this moment and leave the results to God. Just let it go. There's nothing, you know, you just have to take care of right now. And the way that I've always thought about the business that we're in is as you sow, so shall you reap.
Yes.
So if your intention is to get, you're going to get God. If your intention is to serve, to do good, to put good out in the world, that's what's going to come back. Which, yes. But, you know, you have to, and it's like you were talking about going somewhere but not having an idea about how you're going to do it. It reminds me of if I want to leave here and go to New York City, if I have a map, I have a pretty good chance of getting there, and much quicker than if I just wander out of the door and wander around, ask directions, get lost, stay lost. So it really does help focus your energy, and I think that's really critically important in what we're doing. So I think you're just spot on with every bit of this. Your intention has to be right, your methodologies have to be good, your visioning has to be good, and if it's not the truth, you can fix it.
That's exactly right. You just have to raise your hand and ask questions, right? But it does start with knowing you want to go to New York, right? Some people just know they want to go anywhere but here. But where is that? Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, one of the places when I get stuck on, you know, sort of looking beyond what's next, you know, how do you go next? I just think about the people I'm trying to serve and what might I do that would result in their best interest being addressed. Mm-hmm. So with my labor, right, what I've learned along the way, my experience and the wit I've got, I'm definitely not the brightest. I'm not the quickest. I'll let my work ethic stand up next to anybody's. You know, I'm capable of doing the full day over and over again too. There are other people like that. So when I'm unsure where that points, I just think about the people important in my life, and with this gift of 24 hours, how can I best serve them?
Right.
You know, what might I do that serves them best long term? And that if you don't quite know where you want to go, start thinking of where you might go that serves the people around you that you love.
Well, I love the idea of a vision board. I think that's it's very powerful and gives you something tangible to aim toward, that you see it routinely. I've not, well, I do have a board here with all sorts of things on it, but I think I'm going to change its focus a little bit to include what you just said. I think that's very powerful stuff.
Well, I mean, I look behind you and I see some landscapes, right, that seem to me like they're landscapes of places you may want to be. And clearly you're working on your own version of Einstein. I mean, you've got that picture back there. So, I mean, I can see the wheels turning right now.
Einstein, quite an interesting fellow.
Yes. Yeah. I'm still trying to get sleek and tough like the rhino, right? So that's
that's your idea of sleek? I need to talk about that.
I may have some self-imaging.
Well, this is a brilliant conversation, sir. And, you know, people say that sometimes they think we're in a sales business, and I disagree with that. I think we're in a personal development business. And you know, as much as you can take care of your self in terms of growth and helping the people around you have a better life, it's a service business. You know, it's
I agree with you. Service-based leadership. I tend to, you know, what I want to position it as, because of what I admire in other people, is I want to be in a position of leadership that I've earned. I think the true measure of leadership is influence. Mm-hmm. And I think that you best influence others by your example. Mm-hmm. So I get up every day thinking about what I can do better than I did the day before. And that example can serve other people. And then that stuff I talked about being there and listening to people and being with them, you know, even with my staff, my team, right? These are very capable people. They don't need me to tell them to get out of bed, and they don't really need me to tell them to do their work or how to do their work. I play a role in guiding what we do, but I've made sure I've aligned myself with people that share similar values. right? And so then what I can do if I want to be that leader is I can be present for them and knock down whatever obstacles I have to knock down or whatever it is to get out of the way, right? So you can serve people by, one, developing your influence with your example and being present for them. And the rest of that stuff, that arc of leadership is going to come, because that's how you get on that arc.
Well, I think that when you listen, I think you're listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond.
One of the best lessons from Stephen Covey that ever gave us, right, in one of his 7 habits was listen to the intent to understand and not reply. Man, that's a hard one because we're just ready with the answer.
Right.
But that's not the answer. The answer is to listen.
Yeah, that's pretty brilliant stuff. Well, anything you'd like to add here on the wrap up?
Let me just say I appreciate everybody taking some time with us today and let us talk about these things. They're not as tangible as some of the things we specifically speak about, but I would say they endure every bit as much as this other stuff that we invest time in. And I do want you to think about this. I don't know where you're at in life and don't know if you're on the course you want to be on or not, but if you're not there, don't give up on yourself. Don't do it. I mean, you're going to live this life anyway, right? You're going to wake up tomorrow and live that full day anyway. Get some mileage out of it, man. Make it work for you.
Excellent advice. Eddie Stone, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Winder. Until next time.
Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.